You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is week 10 already, breezing along. Mr. Harris, what is good in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight, sir?
All the usual stuff. I mean, the best part is we are past the halfway point of the NFL season and showing no signs of slowing, even as the COVID waters get a little trickier to navigate, a little murkier. They're plowing ahead, and it seems like some of the lessons learned about position groups isolating and staying apart from the rest of the team, things like that are starting to pay off. So hopefully that continues on and we get a full season in, and we all have our best fantasy outcomes possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy, but we're getting our fix as we do each year. Kyle, everything all right?
Yeah, man, it's been every show you come on and be like, wow, can you believe that we're already this way through the year? And even though you say it every week, I must say I kind of agree. It's been going fast.
All these seasons just tend to go fast. Maybe just because I'm very old. Everything goes fast. As I hurtle towards the final countdown. Speaking of final countdowns, we got a little bit of something out of Christian McCaffrey, but it might have been, well, maybe it's not the final countdown. The last one we'll see for a little while. He had a strong game against the Chiefs. Also injured his shoulder. Matt Rule has all but admitted he will not play this week, and it looks like week to week beyond that. He's getting a second opinion. They're pretending shoulder surgery isn't necessary. Mike Davis back in the mix. Did we all hang on to him, Justin?
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, there's been a lot of adversity, I want to say, at the running back position. We're seeing more and more committees. We're seeing more and more injuries. So, yeah, you would keep him definitely. If there was any need for a handcuff, I suppose it would be Christian McCaffrey, given what we saw Mike Davis do, which was surprising, right around 20 touches. And this week, he is an ultimate value on the main slate on DraftKings. He's a free square, if you will, at 4,000. So he will be in nearly 100% of my DraftKings lineup. So, yeah, if you kept him, good for you. I don't see why you wouldn't, because it's been a crazy position.
It has been, and we'll see more craziness. Joe Mixon did not practice to open the week on Wednesday. Kyle, would Gio Bernard be a good pivot for you if it works out that way in this matchup?
Yeah, so the Pittsburgh matchup isn't great, but I'm not too awfully concerned, especially because of the reception value you get from him. I think that's largely independent of who he is playing, because most of it is sort of just like design dump-offs. They aren't really things that he's like having to go out and beat this awesome Pittsburgh secondary or anything. So yes, I think if we do end up seeing Joe Mixon out, Giovanni Bernard he's certainly not a lock button, because there are a lot of good values, Mike Davis being the most of them, but I think there are other good values that make Giovanni Bernard in the mix. But in DFS, you don't have to guarantee that you're playing him in season long. Most of my teams went receiver heavy, so I would kill for a Giovanni Bernard week.
Nick Chubb trending towards coming back. He is back on the practice field, says he's bored, eager to play. It's a great matchup. You could play both these running backs if you needed to against the Houston Texans. On the other side of the ball, David Johnson, not a lock to play, has a concussion, did not practice to start the week. Duke Johnson revenge game. Who's in?
Oh, it is a revenge game. You're right. I didn't even these are the things you got to look out for. Like if Kalen Ballage plays, it's a Kalen Ballage revenge game, right? So these are the sneaky things we have you on the show for, Bob.
I have my brief moments. The Kalen Ballage revenge game. I like that one. Looks like Miles Sanders is practicing on a limited basis. It seems like he's heading towards returning to the lineup in this week's game. Alshon Jeffrey could be as well. David Montgomery has an extra night to get ready for the Monday night game coming off the concussion. Boy, that's just an unexciting, uninspiring offense. Not sure anyone should be excited about that. Kenyon Drake practicing. Seems like he could make a quick return. Chase Edmonds, not overly impressive, but handled the volume. Maybe both these guys would be better off with a little less work and maybe a little less Kyler Murray running in touchdowns too. Mark Ingram could return this week. Turn it back into a three-way split, Justin. How exciting is that?
It's not exciting at all. In fact, I I had an awful lot of Dalvin Cook, like everybody else last week, played the early slate only, and I was in between Dobbins and Hines, and I needed some cap relief, if you will, and Dobbins is what I landed on. I watched that game from front to back, and it was just, he wasn't used, I think, the way he should be. Saw a lot of Gus Edwards. It's really, again, and I say this continuously, and we're seeing more and more of it, but it's another committee. They are an offense without an identity, and I think the Baltimore Ravens are an overrated football team, to be frank. So it would be nice to say, hey, all right, they drafted Dobbins for a reason as a replacement, I think, for Mark Ingram. Let's see what he can do with 20 plus touches, but that has not been the case. So uninspiring, to say the least.
I think it's interesting there that, Lamar Jackson came out and basically said, teams are calling out our plays. Mm-hmm. They know what we're up to. And, we've kind of seen that in the past with Greg Roman offenses. This is, he came up with a crazy scheme for Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco. Coordinator spent the offseason figuring it out, and then it didn't work as good. So, a little more to this one than just the basics of the story. So something worth watching, there going forward as well. Interesting to see the quarterback throwing people maybe under the bus in a very polite way. But nonetheless, throwing them under the bus. Chris Carson seems like he's a little ahead of Carlos Hyde today. We'll see if that holds true tomorrow. It seems like one of those guys will be back this week. Kenny Galladay still ailing. Don't expect to see him back this week, not practicing. Ben Roethlisberger should be ready to go. He's isolating from the COVID, testing negative, sat in the plane next to Vance McDonald, who's on the list, but negative testing, hurt his knees against the Dallas Cowboys. This will give him extra time to get treatment and recover. Alex Smith will return to the starting lineup with Kyle Allen done essentially for the year. So we all have that to look forward to. And I am looking forward to it because I have some J.D. McKissick shares. And I think that will bode well for him. So let's jump into the DFS slate, guys. Interesting week. We got like kind of a nice mix of early window and late afternoon window games. That mighty Patriot Ravens Sunday night game we've all been waiting for. Let's jump into the quarterbacks, and we'll start with you, Kyle.
Yeah, so at quarterback, I think the two obvious quarterbacks are going to be the matchup of Buffalo and Arizona, and I think those are both fine. I certainly wouldn't fault anyone for playing quarterbacks from the highest total game that features two of the best fantasy quarterbacks of the season. But I will say the best fantasy quarterback of the season by DraftKings scoring, at least who is on the main slate, is Russell Wilson. Despite that, he is only the third highest priced quarterback. He's also getting significantly less ownership, which really that is, I think, what is most important, and it should also track to his pass catching options. So I think if I can find leverage by playing a game with similarly a 55.5 point total versus a 56 point total, Vegas is telling me that there is no difference in the scoring we're going to see in Rams versus Seahawks and in Buffalo versus Arizona. Those two games should feature just as many points. But one of the quarterbacks, and I think potentially the best quarterback of the three this year based on fantasy points and the value he gives you, is going to be lower owned. I think that is very clearly signaling to me that I want to continue riding with Russell Wilson. Now I can get him at not low ownership. People recognize he's a good play, but I don't think they simply understand how good of a play he is, and that although Buffalo, Arizona is a great game, his game is almost no different. And I like the stacking options just as much, if not more. Justin Herbert, I keep going back to Justin Herbert. He still is probably a guy who should be priced over 7K, and he is not on DraftKings. The stacking options are very clear for him outside of these like miserable random touchdowns. But the volume, when you look at the volume, the air yards are going to Mike Williams. The overall target volume is going to Keenan Allen, who has like double-digit targets in every game he's finished with Justin Herbert. And some dump-offs are going to Hunter Henry. So when I can feel fairly confident that outside of the fluky touchdown production, which I don't think holds for guys like their fullback or Joe Reed or Jalen Guyton, that I'm getting the right plays when I double stack my Justin Herbert lineups, I think that's absolutely where I'm going to go. Outside of that, I think those are probably the two most efficient spots. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, I definitely think you could work your way into some Tom Brady stacks. I think because we saw such a miserable performance from Brady and this entire offense, he's going to be relatively low owned. I don't think he deserves to be. I think outside of that game, he has looked pretty good all season. He's thrown a lot of touchdowns. His team now has probably the best receiving trio, maybe in the history of the NFL, given the context of how good Antonio Brown was at his peak. The early career Mike Evans really is one of the best starts to a career, I think 6 or 7 years now or something like that. One of the best starts to a career ever. Chris Godwin, incredible age-adjusted production. I know maybe you have a little bit more of that. You don't know who's going to get it week to week with this team, but I'm fine building multiple Tom Brady lineups betting on people being overreacting to this awful game that they played, which admittedly, God, that was a terrible game. But I think, Tom Brady's good enough to bounce back. The spot is great versus Carolina, and it's another spot where I think people are just underrating that this has over 50-point total. I think it's going to be one of the lowest owned 50-point totals on the slate. So Brady as the cheaper, more off the board play, and then up top, I think Russell Wilson is just such an obvious play, and it's good leverage in my opinion off of the Murray and Allen lineups.
Yeah, I'll buy that, Justin.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that for sure. I mean, I'm going to have an awful lot of Kyler Murray. When you look at what he's done, especially on DraftKings, you get the 100-yard rushing bonus, and then after 300 yards, you'll get a bonus as well. 41 DraftKings points, and in week 9 and week 7, like this kid has it all, and he gets another incredible matchup at home against Buffalo. We saw what Wilson was able to do in Buffalo. Just some of these defenses are just really, really bad overall, especially through the air. So I'm going to have an awful lot of Kyler Murray and probably go back to DeAndre Hopkins. Gentlemen, Aaron Rodgers is pretty easy. When you play him with Davante Adams and you move on. I mean, they're big favorites at Lambeau Field against the Jaguars. He is going to shred them. I mean, you're going to have some Aaron Rodgers. You're going to have some Aaron Jones. They get a lead. Little concerned about the backfield. I think, they didn't rush Aaron Jones back. You might see a little bit of Jamal Williams. So I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers. Kyle's dead on as far as Russell Wilson. He's matchup proof. People are going to see Ramsey, who's probably going to get Metcalf. I'll go back to Wilson with Tyler Lockett. Now, Josh Allen, I get the allure, but prior to last week, week 9, he came back to earth for a good month. I mean, he was doing some damage, and we love the rushing equity, but going on the road at Arizona, not a bad defense there. I will have Josh Allen, but I will not have a ton of Josh Allen, but I get to play for certain. Justin Herbert is another guy. I think he's really going to get battle tested at Miami. I've been talking about this Dolphins defense for weeks and weeks and weeks. They're aggressive. They blitz. Some of their packages they take chances, and Justin Herbert's going to be tested against a confident Dolphins defense. I'll have a little of him, but we're going to see what he's made of for sure. When you look at Jared Goff, speaking of the Dolphins, who I used against Goff, and they dropped about 25 DraftKings points a couple weeks ago. I mean, Jared Goff is not going to be in a better spot at home against the Seattle Seahawks, so it would behoove you at 6,500 to play him. Do I like Jared Goff? Not particularly, but as far as the matchup, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, they had something like Cooper Kupp had 20 targets a couple weeks ago against Miami, and Woods 8 as well. So where the ball's going with the Rams. I will have some Jared Goff and kind of pray because he's not Joe Montana. I dipped down a little bit. Drew Lock was one of my favorite plays last week. He won a lot of people a lot of money based on the salary. And I think the confidence is growing with him, and we love to see that. They're kind of thrown into the flames, and it's his gig, right? So he lit up the Falcons. The price hasn't moved a ton on him this week. It's another juicy matchup in Las Vegas, 5,500. You stack him with Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant, something like that. You're doing it on the cheap, and it frees up some cap for the Devontae Adams and the Kamaras of the world. So I'm not going to be mad at the Drew Lock play. Derek Carr, once again, projecting well. I mean, 16 touchdowns, 2 picks. This is a Raiders team where when you look at them on the surface, they're not eye-popping. But there's a chance tonight they're going to make the playoffs if they continue this. I get the play. You're going to save money. I would use Derek Carr and Darren Waller priced up. We haven't seen a 30-point week from Waller, so in tournaments, definitely. So it's going to be the big four for sure. I think dollar for dollar, Kyle's right. Russell Wilson is the player. You're getting a discount off Kyler Murray and Rodgers. But I will be paying up at quarterback, not fooling around, hoping for 30, 35 DraftKings points. And I'm not going to be mad about going back to Drew Lock in like a Jerry Jeudy stack. Judy's priced up this week. So I'm going to be paying up, be paying way down, and in the middle, it's probably going to be Jared Goff. But I also get the Tom Brady play.
Yeah, Derek Carr, multiple touchdowns in all but 2 games this year, including a couple 3-touchdown games. So if you find the right combination, it might be nice. Running backs, Justin.
Yeah, last week was interesting. I attacked, and I remember texting Kyle about it. I played the early slate, and a lot of it to kind of eliminate the later games. Right, this week we have a balance, which we love as fans, right, and fantasy players. So skeptical about Christian McCaffrey. Had him, but didn't have nearly enough. and that was a big problem. Kind of hesitant with Dalvin Cook a couple weeks ago. He did the same thing in back-to-back weeks. So McCaffrey went bananas, and if you didn't have him, you lost money. And now he's not going to play, so we're going to get Mike Davis at 4K, and you're just going to plug him in. He's going to free up money, and again, I'm going to have him in probably 95% of my lineups. And if he fails, he fails. With Mike Davis, I'm going Alvin Kamara. His floor is safe. His ceiling is as high as anybody's. He's 8,200. Yes, Michael Thomas is back. Is he the Michael Thomas that we saw last year? Time will tell. I feel as safe with Alvin Kamara as anybody. You can bank on him for 5, 6, 7 receptions, 8 receptions every single week. I'll be using Mike Davis, Alvin Kamara in the vast majority of my lineups. Projection-wise, and as far as optimal lineups are concerned, Chase Edmonds is popping in numerous models, and you know why. I mean, it's the usage and the involvement in the passing game. He had 25 carries last week. He had 3 receptions. Kenyon Drake, if he plays, I don't like the Chase Edmonds play. It's certainly not for 6,300, but he could be used, I suppose, at that point in tournaments, because you don't know how much we're going to see of Kenyon Drake, who has not been involved in the passing game whatsoever. So the last name that I will mention, because again, I think this is a position, the more and more we play. Last week I had a lot of Dobbins, I had a lot of Nyheim Hines, and we know what Nyheim Hines is capable of doing, just not on a consistent basis. Dobbins, a lot of ambiguity there. Again, I think if he got the ball 20 times or properly, he would have paid off his $4,900 salary. So not screwing around at running back. The hope is that Miles Sanders plays, like you mentioned Sanders beginning of the show, Bob. Give me some Miles Sanders. I mean, Miles Sanders is the guy. We've seen it discounted, 6,400. I'm not going to, we were worried about Dalvin Cook getting eased in. We were worried about Christian McCaffrey. I think they're giving most of these players enough time to heal, recuperate, and I will go to Miles Sanders. So tonight, it's going to be Alvin Kamara in the majority of my lineups. It's going to be Mike Davis in pretty much all of my lineups. If we get the green light on Miles Sanders against the Giants at his price tag against the Giants, I'm using Miles Sanders. And Chase Edmonds should probably be in your lineups, contingent on Kenyon Drake playing or not. So I'm going to be using a lot of 3 running back lineups, and and the majority of them are going to look like Mike Davis, Alvin Kamara, Chase Edmonds, and Miles Sanders.
Not DFS or any. I mean, so we look at Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Dalvin Cook. Are those the 2 guys that you're most eager to play in just about any format, Justin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they are the centerpiece, the focal point of their respective offenses. I know, obviously, what Michael Thomas did last year, pound for pound, you could say he's the best wide receiver in the league. Is it the case? I don't know. You can make a case for Devontae Adams. A couple years ago it was Nuke Hopkins. So it's from a comfort level. I think it is Alvin Kamara. It is Dalvin Cook, and it's obviously Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy. We saw that against the Kansas City Chiefs at his first week back. The usage is there. The involvement in the passing game is there. And that's what we want to pay up for every week. When you start screwing around with the Josh Jacobs in the world and the James Robinson, you look at their price tag, but they can also get you 13, 14 points, 15 points. James Robinson came up 1 yard short of the 100-yard bonus on DraftKings week 9. So I'm finding it more and more. And, I will put Aaron Jones into the mix on certain occasions when he's just coming back. But I think it's a position where you got to pay up for, and you got to do it with confidence, because you can get burned. And I learned that firsthand, and it wasn't the first time, last week with J.K. Dobbins and Nyheim Hines.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, Kyle, your running backs.
So Mike Davis, we won't belabor it too much. He's going to play a form of the Christian McCaffrey role at the minimum price on DraftKings. For me, I think you play him and you move on. Cash, even tournaments, I think I'd rather just try and get different elsewhere, make different correlations. So playing Mike Davis. Duke Johnson kind of falls into that same role. We talked on him earlier. I won't go too in on it, but they basically don't have backup running backs they use too much. Last week, they did not have a backup running back record a touch on this team. It was only Duke Johnson after David Johnson went out. David Johnson concussion protocol right now. Doesn't look like he's going to play. Obviously, if he does play, I would suggest not playing Duke Johnson. But if he doesn't play, Duke Johnson will potentially see this 3-down role for a brief and shining moment. He is only 5K, so I think that makes him definitely in play. DeAndre Swift right now coming in with a little bit of ownership, but I think generally the way I look at my lineups is it is a lineup as a whole, not just a collection of these own players. Whereas I think if I'm playing multiple cheap running backs, Mike Davis is going to be super chalk. But because he's chalk, you're going to get a lot of Mike Davis, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara lineups. If I go with a double cheap running back and a Mike Davis, Duke Johnson, a Mike Davis, DeAndre Swift, who's only 5,100, I think that is a way to both play, reasonably popular plays and get vastly unique, whereas the Detroit team should be able to handle their business against Washington. Alex Smith, for how incredible his comeback story has been, it's been incredibly inefficient. That should keep the Lions as a favored team, and I do think when they are favored, which for the Lions is not all that often, they do want to run the football. It's not going to be exclusively with Swift, but I do believe that he is the better and more talented player. So I will be going to, on the cheap side, DeAndre Swift. If I want to pay up, I think I would look to Aaron Jones over Alvin Kamara. Obviously, Alvin Kamara has this incredible role, but Aaron Jones, when healthy, his role isn't the same, but it's not that far off, and he plays for a team that I think we can project reasonably to score more touchdowns this week. Vegas has them as the highest implied team total. So at 7,100, Aaron Jones, based on his role and his offense, looks a lot like a running back who should be 8K, and because Devontae Adams is so expensive, I don't mind fading Devontae Adams and using Aaron Jones as that leverage. So I think he makes a very interesting, simple leverage play. And the last one I'll just touch on is Miles Sanders. I think Justin was right on the money with Miles Sanders being not that popular, not that expensive, only at 6,400, and could resume this 3-down role where he gets a lot of targets, which can, like, Carson Wentz please connect with his running backs. It seems like that is like his biggest Achilles heel. Maybe I only notice it because I always play Miles Sanders, but his throws to running backs are so incredibly errant. I don't think that's probably actually a trait of his. I think it's just randomness. So if we're going to see a lot of targets for Sanders, if we're going to see the bulk of the carries in a game that I think, again, they probably should win, I think Miles Sanders, for his volume alone, is just an easy play.
Yeah, I'm buying that as well. Both of you make good points on that. So dive into the wide receiver room, Kyle.
So at the top, I think wide receiver, I'm mostly just looking to correlate with the quarterback I'm playing, or you could argue it the other way around. I'm looking to correlate my quarterback with my wide receiver. But since we've already talked about quarterbacks, I guess I'll talk about it from that perspective. Tyler Lockett in the mid 6K range is simply just underpriced, and he's not even, I would argue he's probably not even his team's number one receiver. He's basically the exact same target share as DK Metcalf, but the air yards for DK Metcalf are so much greater than Tyler Lockett's. It's like if you're going to get these two guys who both get as many targets, one of them is the bona fide chain mover, and the other one is not maybe, you wouldn't call him necessarily an underneath player, but he's just getting less air yards. So his volume does have a bit of a caveat to it. I think both are perfectly fine plays. I think because we have Mike Davis, because we have Duke Johnson, you can afford to pay up for your DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson stacks, and they will be the most contrarian way to play an already a bit unique Russell Wilson play, because Tyler Lockett at his price is the better points per dollar play, and I think the field will recognize that. So if I'm looking to build a single entry, like lower stakes lineup, I think I'm going to go with the simple route and take the very cheap Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson stack. If I'm looking to get more unique, I think going with the DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson lineup will be much more unique and still has just as much, if not more, upside. Both of these guys on any given week just can go absolutely berserk. And then on the other side of the ball, you have the Los Angeles Rams, who have generally been a run-heavy team, but if Russell Wilson does get up to a lead, that is like last year when we saw this team completely flip the script. When they were as underdogs, they were both one of the fastest and the pass heaviest teams. They understand that when you're down, you can't afford to be trying to grind out clock. You have to try and get back into the game. For that reason, Cooper Kupp, who now has a pretty strong lead on the target share in Los Angeles, is my favorite run back option. Also has a smaller lead in the air yard share over Robert Woods. So I think if I'm running it back, which I almost always am, I would look to Cooper Kupp. I think Robert Woods is perfectly fine as well. Always gives you that jet sweep action as well, which he can actually score on. So that's fun. That's exciting. I wouldn't bank on it too much. I would just say if I'm playing my Russell Wilson lineups, I am almost certainly running every single one back with more so Cooper Kupp, but still some Robert Woods. Another game I talked about, the Chargers game, I think Mike Williams is certainly in play as top 10 in deep targets in the league and is relatively underpriced for a guy who is getting a lot of deep targets from an incredibly good quarterback right now, just playing super hot. And I don't see it coming down anytime soon in Justin Herbert. The obvious play, though, I think most of my Herbert lineups are going to feature Keenan Allen +1 of Williams and or Hunter Henry, simply because Keenan Allen in the games that Justin Herbert has played and Keenan Allen has finished is averaging over 12.7 targets per game, over 9 receptions, and nearly 100 yards per game. He's actually scoring touchdowns too, which has kind of been something that he doesn't have a ton of upside in. With the way Justin Herbert is throwing touchdowns, that might actually be the script getting flipped there. So I think Keenan Allen in your Justin Herbert lineups makes a ton of sense. If I'm looking to get leverage on my Mike Davis lineups, I think one of the ways to do that is people aren't going to want to correlate it on the other side. Another thing that, I talked about Tom Brady. I will give my favorite receiver on this team, though. I think you could argue that it's kind of random and pick whoever you want. But we've seen, like, Mike Evans with Chris Godwin on the field up until the last time we saw them was averaging, like, less than 2 receptions a game. I think Chris Godwin is probably the number 1 receiver on this team. And we saw that was the Thursday night game, it was an island game, whatever game it was that we saw Chris Godwin run all but one of the potential routes for Tom Brady's dropbacks. It's like a 97% route share. Mike Evans missed like a snap or two with the groin injury or something. I think he's probably still the number 2, but I feel fairly confident, given those Mike Evans, Chris Godwin splits, that Mike Evans is only the number 2. I'm probably still looking to double stack because they're so cheap, but it's sort of the Keenan Allen situation. I view Chris Godwin as the number 1, and then I'm going to mix in a certain mix of Antonio Brown and Mike Evans lineup. So for me, it's a lot of just finding the correlation plays. I also think any single week, like I think Terry McLaurin just goes under-owned based on his role specifically, even if his quarterback play isn't very good. And I like the one-off correlation of Terry McLaurin versus who do they play? I just had it, DeAndre Swift.
There you go. And so just a quick note on that. Cooper Kupp's a little beat up. He's got the wrist opening the week limited. That'll be something to watch in coming days. Darrell Henderson also a little beat up. Justin, your wide receiver picks, sir.
It is a maintenance day for sure. Look, Devontae Adams, dollar for dollar. You know where you're getting, kind of like Kamara for me. He is 2020's Michael Thomas. Let's be honest. He does whatever he wants. 12 to 15 targets every week. I'm going to lock and load, and I'm going to be, at worst, like 20 DraftKings points. At best, 35. I'll be right there. I think it's going to be a good spot to go back to DeAndre Hopkins after he got shut down by a tight, again, Miami Dolphins defense. It's a good secondary there as well. We'll talk about them later on. This is a position where we can diversify our lineups and we can have a lot of fun. And this week is as deep as it gets. There's a lot of value. Kyle mentioned Tyler Lockett. We love that rapport with Russell Wilson. It's as good as it gets. I mean, DK Metcalf, yeah, he's probably the best wide receiver on the team pound for pound, but do not disregard Tyler Lockett at all. People are going to think of Jalen Ramsey in that secondary. I think that Kyle's right. I mean, this Russell Wilson stack is going to go probably under-owned in comparison to the Allens and the Kyler Murrays of the world. So Stephon Diggs, I'm going to use DeAndre Hopkins. You're probably obligated to use Stephon Diggs. Of course, Patrick Peterson is as good as it gets as far as I'm concerned. Not the guy he used to be, but he's right there. So, and I'm with Kyle as far as running a player back almost 100% of the time. Keenan Allen just does not get the respect that he deserves.
No,
at all.
That's a fact.
And the price, he's really a 75, 76, 77, 8K guy, really. Right at 7,100. We know Herbert's going to throw the ball. It's a tight Dolphins secondary. Keenan Allen's going to get 10, 12, 13 targets. You're not spending Devontae Adams 9K money. It's only 7,100 going right back there. And by the way, Kyle, I agree with Terry McLaurin. I think he's in a smash spot. The only issue I have is I love DeAndre Swift. Another one of these guys where, Matt Patricia, give him the ball 20 times, kind of like Dobbins is like, what is going on here? Why aren't they seeing what we see? And not as fantasy owners and analysts, but as fans of the game. Like, are they seeing something different? As far as Cooper Kupp and Woods, 100% certainty that I'll be using one of those with Lockett. Probably going to have some Metcalf. Disregard Jalen Ramsey. I think he is a man, DK Metcalf. So his ownership will be deflated because people are going to see Ramsey. The Will Fullers of the world, yeah, I'm not going to be mad at you at all. I mean, even the Travis Fulghams this week, it's a good spot. As I dig, and there was a big crowd in the middle. DJ Chark showed up last week. I had an awful lot of them. I think he's in a spot where the Packers are going to be out front by double digits. DJ Chark is going to get force-fed 6,200. I'll go right back there. to diversify my lineups. The Christian Kirks of the world and Judy's elevated. I have no problem there. And Brandon Cooks. There's a lot of homework to be done. Again, it's only Wednesday we record. But if, dollar for dollar, when I look at Deontay Johnson at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, 5K, we've talked about this guy over and over and over again. 5,200, I think his upside is nearly as good as anybody's. I think if you just piece it together, he could easily pay off that $5,200 tag this week at Cincinnati. In fact, he's my Jerry Jeudy this week. Write it down. And DJ Moore is not far from it. Devontae Parker with Preston Williams going on IR, I'm going to disregard the Chargers secondary, and I'm going to go right to Devontae Parker. Probably use him in Keenan Allen lineups. We have yet to see the Devontae Parker. Well, week 4 we did against Seattle, but everybody beats on Seattle. We have yet to see the Devontae Parker we thought was going to show up in 2020. It's coming. And at 5K, I can envision him being force-fed by Tua. Week 10, love the price, love the opportunity, absolutely love the matchup. So tonight, it's Devontae Adams. I'm not going to fool around there. It is Keenan Allen. Splitting hairs between Cooper Kupp and Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. Probably take the discount on Woods, but I'll have exposure to Kupp and Robert Woods. I'm going right back to Tyler Lockett this week. I think it's a great spot for him. And the DJ Shark I will have exposure to given the game script. And I'm going to save here. And it's going to be a lot of Devontae Parker, and it's going to be a lot of Deontay Johnson.
Quickly, just both of you. I'll start with you, Kyle, before we dump into the tight ends. Curtis Samuel, thoughts. What are we doing with that Carolina receiving core? Is it possible? I mean, Robbie Anderson to me seems like he's still the leading weapon there. Are we starting to believe Curtis Samuel is moving ahead of DJ Moore, or is it just a mirage?
It's about time.
I don't. Okay, so I think he should have a role in the offense. I think that is very clear. His skill set is quite unique and deserves to have a role. Do I think he should be used over DJ Moore, and do I think he will continue to be used over DJ Moore? No, I still think it's more likely that DJ Moore is like a high-volume field stretcher. Curtis Samuel is one of the more used, but still just a gadget player, one of the more used gadget players. And Robbie Anderson every week, we just confirm the fact that he is clearly the number one receiver, like top 10 target share, top 10 air yard share. No real reason to doubt that at this point that we have a very clear alpha on this team, and probably a more even split between DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel didn't really show up at all in the box score early in the season. I think that was a mirage, but I think also the recent performance is an overperformance and a mirage as well. I think it is clearly a 1-2-3 situation, but it was almost like a 1-2-0 situation early. So we do have to adjust from that perspective.
Yeah, I think so too. And Justin, you sound like you're all in on Curtis Samuel.
I am, but like Kyle said, he's a gadget player. And it seems like it's taken 5 years for them to figure out that he can do more than just catch the ball. In fact, he had 9 targets last week and led the team. Without Christian McCaffrey, that usage has to go somewhere. And they would be foolish not to get Curtis Samuel the football. From a DFS standpoint, are we chasing points? Well, I don't know that I'm chasing points at 4,900. I mean, given the fact that it's 20 DraftKings points, 29, he's the real deal. And he's used in the running game. We love that. This passing game in Carolina has been interesting. And I mentioned this early in the season when Robbie Anderson was doing his thing. High A-dot guy in Robbie Anderson, low A-dot quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. We thought the ingredients were going to be there for DJ Moore, and it has not translated. Like Kyle said, it's been Robbie Anderson, which has been kind of baffling, given the wide receiver that he is and given the quarterback that Teddy Bridgewater is. So look, the reality is it's only week 10. A lot of different things are going to change. But as far as Curtis Samuel being eye-opening, well, the opportunity's here, and it would behoove them to incorporate him into each game plan week to week, especially if Christian McCaffrey is going to miss time. He can kind of compensate for the lack of Christian McCaffrey. He's obviously a better weapon than Mike Davis every single day of the week.
Mm-hmm. All right. Tight ends, Justin.
Well, the sea of mediocrity tends to get worse and murkier by the year. I love Darren Waller. We collectively like Darren Waller. Is Darren Waller worth 5,900? If I'm using Derek Carr, and I'll probably have a lineup or two of Derek Carr, it's Darren Waller is going to be stacked with him. Am I confident? Not really. Am I happy with 17 DraftKings points? Not really. Will I be happy with some Travis Kelce out of Darren Waller? Absolutely at 5,900. Will not go to TJ Hawkinson. I'm sick of looking at a $5,100 price tag. It seems like it's been months and we know what he is. Pound for pound tonight, for me, it's going to be Evan Ingram. We are seeing the trajectory go up. I think, he's had some bad drops, but Daniel Jones is using him as that proverbial safety blanket. He's got a lot of growing up to do, Jones as well. We like him, the fantasy player, but the NFL quarterback has a lot of work to do. 29 targets in the last 3 weeks for Evan Ingram. We love that. 10, 10, and 9. So at 4,500, there's a level of comfort there that we're getting. I'm nearly all in. It's Wednesday on Evan Ingram as my tight end, week 10. One more name I'll shoot at you. Well, by the way, our boy in Green Bay, Tonyan, is projecting well. That doesn't say much to me, but the price, I get it, and he's option 3 for Aaron Rodgers, so that's not bad. Maybe even option 2 some weeks, but not a lot of consistency there. It's going to be Austin Hooper. I think where Odell Beckham is out, this is a team that we know their identity. They're going to run the football. They backed up the Brinks truck for Austin Hooper, tight end 6 last year in Atlanta. Little different offense. He's back after missing 2 weeks with the appendix. 3,900, really gravitating toward the price and kind of clinging on to the Atlanta Falcons, Austin Hooper. But without Odell Beckham, I think that he's going to be used, these 2 tight end sets in Cleveland. I think if he gets me 15 points, I'm content. I don't need Travis Kelce numbers out of 3,900 Austin Hooper. So the targets are somewhat all over the place. Week 6, 10, 7. But again, it's mostly contingent on the price. I don't want to pay up. Travis Kelce is not on the slate. And you can start digging deep, really deep into the sea of mediocrity and land on Logan Thomas and Jordan Reed's projecting. I think you're gambling there. So for me, tonight, dollar for dollar, it's probably going to be Evan Ingram. Rob Gronkowski caught my eye, but it is cloudy in Tampa Bay in a good way in terms of usage to go around. There's a lot of mouths to feed. AB is there. I love what Gronk is doing with Tom Brady. It's a reminder of what used to happen here in New England. But again, we don't know how he's going to be used. I'm not crazy about 4,700 Rob Gronkowski. So Evan Ingram, Austin Hooper tonight, really short list. And if I knew that Tyler Higbee was going to be the Tyler Higbee that we saw week 2, which was once, and Tyler Higbee, boys, we probably had, I'm sure the 3 of us had him as top 5 or 6 tight ends, heading into the season, but haven't seen it. We've seen more Gerald Everett, which is interesting. So Evan Ingram and Austin Hooper for me this week.
I think we all know that we don't activate Tyler Higbee till the final 5 games of the season.
That's right.
So we got that going for us. Did you say Jordan Thomas? Did I hear a Jordan Thomas mention, or did you misspeak, or did I mishear?
No, I said Jordan Reed.
Oh, okay.
Which is sad. When you
I thought you had Patriots on your mind and the newly acquired Jordan Thomas, the 6'5", 277-pound behemoth.
Martellus Bennett-esque. But I mean, they're another sad story. We could spend an episode on the Patriots, but sure I told you, Cam Newton, you guys were, it's bad. It's bad here. Hey, come back to earth. Nothing lasts forever.
Did you see how he played against the Jets? That was certainly
he was amazing.
He was good, man. He looked good in that game. If only you got to play the Jets every week.
Kyle, give me the right tight ends.
Yeah, I'm not playing Austin Hooper, man. You couldn't pay me to play the 1A tight end on the most run-heavy team in the NFL. Not doing that. I think there are players who can give you just as much volume at lower ownership, like Hunter Henry, every single week, like 7 or 8 targets, at least 7 targets at least, in 6 of 8 weeks. He's getting the volume. It simply has been that the touchdown variance and the long plays haven't gone his way. He was posting a long play every single week for the first few weeks, and then the drought has come through. The same with touchdowns. I think he has 1 touchdown in Justin Herbert starts, despite Justin Herbert, I think, throwing 17 touchdowns. If you're going to be on the field getting targeted 6 to 7 times a game from one of the best right now quarterbacks in the NFL, period, the way he's playing, I'm going to keep going back to Hunter Henry until either A, he stops getting the volume, or B, he starts getting priced up because he eventually scores touchdowns. So going back to Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, I think, is just like the riskier version of Hunter Henry. I think we saw in weeks 1 and 2, he led the team in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. Might have been tied for touchdowns as well. I know they have Travis Fulgham, who emerged as a better receiver than they had in those first 2 games. I still think there is a role for, a number 1 tight end on this team. We saw it for Zach Ertz for years, and then this year he comes up completely dusted. I think Dallas Goedert finally gets his footing at 4,200. I'm willing to bet on him there. I don't think his ownership is too high. I think after, Waller and Hooper, we get a pretty big drop-off. Outside of that, I think Logan Thomas is probably the best of the punt plays just because I don't feel good about, anyone under 3,500. I don't think there's a good play under 3,500. I think the best of the bad plays under 3,500 will be Logan Thomas, who's seen at least 4 targets in every single week. Alex Smith, generally a low ADOT guy. See McKissick, JD if you want to learn more about the low ADOT throws from Alex Smith. I think there's a punt play. I like him, and he correlates well with my DeAndre Swift liking. So those are my plays. I'm also just fine eating the chalk with Darren Waller in some spots because I think he gives you access to more volume than any other receiver on the slate. I mean, he's like the closest thing we have to Kelsey. He's not that close, but he's also not priced that much. So I think Darren Waller chalk is fine. Outside of that, I'm just looking for modestly cheap ways and modestly owned ways to find solid roles for me. That's Goddard. That's Henry. It's ugly. It's probably also Thomas, though.
Scary how much we missed one Travis Kelsey, the only tight end who isn't. Well, we're right. Waller is not, but I mean, there's not a lot of tight ends we want to play right now. Defenses are another story. There's a whole rafter full of them. Which ones do you like, Justin?
I like the Dolphins. I like the Dolphins. 2,800. I love what they're doing, and they're getting better and better. And I feel like I sound like a broken record, and I am. They're giving up points, but they're taking risks. And we like that. They ate Jared Goff alive at home. This is a home game for the Dolphins. Rookie Justin Herbert heads into Miami. I've said this time and time again, tough place to play. It was a tough place to play historically for Tom Brady. He is going to be tested. This is a good unit, and they're going to throw the house at him. So for 2,800, absolutely. A rookie quarterback, absolutely. That's where I'm going to be. If I'm going to pay up a little, I'm going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Do I say that with conviction? Not really. This is not a Brian Dawkins defense by any means, this Eagles team. But they show some upside, and I like to see upside. Time and time again, I will tell you that, and I know Kyle has a different stance, some people just completely disregard the position, and I think that's a mistake. Because there's quite a difference between 2 or 3 or 4 DraftKings points and the potential at getting 20. I think the Eagles can get you there. Like them. Do not love them. Same game. The Giants. Carson Wentz, kind of Daniel Jones-esque. He can look good periodically, move around. He can look terrible more often than not. He's going to make mistakes. The Giants are at home. The Giants at 2,700 are going to get 10, 11 DraftKings points. So dollar for dollar, I will say, it is the Miami Dolphins defense at home against the rookie Justin Herbert. New York Giants at the Meadowlands at home against the erratic Carson Wentz.
Kyle?
Just a on that. That's all we get on Bob's response from that. I like it. It's ominous. It could mean anything. It's beautiful analysis, to be honest. My pick, if I'm looking at this mid to low range, is the Lions defense. I've harped on it, so I won't go too crazy on it. But the sack rate for Alex Smith in a small sample, and I think this would come down over a larger sample. But right now is at 14%. The interception rate 6%. Only throwing touchdowns at a 2% rate. I love the Alex Smith comeback story. I don't love the play that he's putting on the field, except when I play the Lions defense against it. So that's going to be my highest owned defense, probably by a pretty wide margin. Saints defense, they're 3,000, so it's only if you can find the salary to pay up. When we have Mike Davis, when we have Duke Johnson, you can probably do so. I mean, this is a San Francisco team that unfortunately is just playing backups and practice squad players completely across the board. And even if they do get some of the guys like, Brandon Ayuk or a Kendrick Bourne back, those are not, especially with a guy like, Bourne or Richie James, although James played incredibly the last time we saw him, are not your typical, NFL starters. They're at best backups and maybe not even the best of backups. So I think for me, unfortunately, I just target this unfortunate San Francisco team, which there's nothing they can do about most of these injuries or, the COVID stuff. But because of that, the Saints should probably just have a field day teeing off against this team at home as like double-digit favorites, I believe. So Saints if I'm paying up, Lions if I'm paying down. And like Justin said, I think both sides of the Philly and New York Giants game is perfectly fine to target for defense. I think Philly putting up a decent amount of sack totals per week against one of the lesser and more erratic quarterbacks in the NFL, Daniel Jones. The Philly side is my preferred. I don't hate the Giants side either, though, because I agree. You have some high variance in Carson Wentz, although I think he is still far better than Daniel Jones. So I will go to the Eagles in that game. And those are kind of my three: Eagles, Lions, Saints.
Is it just me, or do all the teams not called Dallas in the NFC East are playing pretty solid defense, really aggressive, and have some good playmaking ability? Part of that probably coming from the fact they play each other a fair amount, right?
I think that is maybe the biggest aspect of it, is because they play each other. Like, they're actually good defenses. Like, the Washington front seven is great and like
crazy good.
Yeah, and the Philly defense isn't bad either. But those numbers do definitely get a boost from getting to play Alex Smith and getting to play like the early season Carson Wentz, which didn't look good, and almost any game of Daniel Jones. So it's some of A, some of B, but I do like it. I do like to watch it.
All right, boys, we got tons of good content up on the website. If you guys haven't been there and you're listening at footballdiehards.com, go there to the footballdiehards.com/free trial. If you like what you see, and you will, use the promo code DIEHARDS to get a 15% discount. Plenty of content from Kyle, including his early week DFS, his cash game and tournament lineup breakdowns. Justin will have the digging into crates piece. I'll have my DFS 3 and out picks. And beyond that, tons of video, this audio, various free agent articles early week. So much stuff that it's almost overwhelming, yet still joyously so. Justin?
Yeah, another great show. Again, I can't believe it's week 10. This is just
Hey, what week is it? Can you believe what week it is?
It's week 10, but we're putting
I can't believe that.
We're putting one foot in front of the other, right? And here we are, week 10. So we're making it. We're battling through the COVID storm. We keep our fingers crossed. Different things pop up as the week goes on, but so far, so good as of now. So keep fingers crossed, one day at a time. That's how we do it, right, Kyle?
That is how we do it, and that will do it for us on this show. We will catch you guys next week, so thanks for tuning in. For myself, on Twitter at Kyle Tweets Here, for Bob at Football Diehard, and for Justin at Justin Lonero. Everyone, again, thanks for tuning in.